Thank you all for joining NACo today. My name is Adam Pugh. I am the Associate Legislative Director for Agriculture and Rural Affairs, as well as Environment, Energy, and Land Use. Today, we have quite a lineup to discuss family farms and the impacts of counties with those farms. So I will go ahead and kick it over to President Johnson since we have a jam-packed agenda.
All right. Thank you, Adam, and good afternoon and good morning to folks on the West Coast. I'm your President, Larry Johnson, and I also serve as a commissioner in DeKalb County, Georgia. I'm excited about today's webinar. We'll focus on family farms and the county role in supporting these American icons. As your president, it's been my pleasure just to travel around the country and talking to many friends in both urban and rural communities. And it's exciting because I really picked up on the theme. Coming from Utah, I've been to North Dakota, talked to folks in Minnesota, just topped the cake because Tom, the new president, and Bob Fox, Commissioner Fox would talk about, he grew up in the same house and he's added on to the house about 4 times, and how it's part of the legacy of farming. Of course, my CEO is on here and he talks about his father and having him on the truck. And so it's just good to have you on because this is an American treasure, our farms. And let's talk rural first. 70% of roughly 2,000 of American counties are considered rural. As you know, our rural areas are truly the building blocks of this country. That's where the rubber meets the road and where our residents stay hard at work, especially many of the folks on here today. And many of us also, when we hear about farms, we think rural, but it's not always the case. I'm excited that we will hear from my good friend, Bobby Wilson, who's the CEO of Metro Atlanta Urban Farms. Even in the middle of a major metropolitan area like Atlanta, farming is flourishing. We will hear about these in just a moment. I've seen firsthand the critical importance of the American agriculture and relative agribusiness that has been in our communities for years. For some communities, agriculture is the economy. Communities like this exist across the country and depend on agriculture for its fiscal solvency. As you will hear today, our farmers are critical to the health and the happiness of our local communities. Farming creates jobs, increases sustainability, and feeds families. America's 3,069 counties are proud to be a place that many family farms call home. And this brings me to why we're here today. Not only do we want to share the best practices, but we also want to use this opportunity to look forward to legislatively to the 2023 reauthorization of the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill, as you know, provides critical funding for America's agricultural industry and producers and has significant impacts on farming livelihoods. As Congress begins to consider reauthorizing this important legislation, we are going to convene county leaders for the discussion on these vital American institutions. If there's a time, there will be time following this panel for a few questions. So please feel free to enter your questions in the chat box during this great presentation. And this is going to be one of the best ones we've had in a long time because these are county officials, most of them, who have also worked as commissioners, but they also run their farms as well. Okay, let's get started with brief introductions. And I'm about to turn it over to our panelists. They're going to tell you more about themselves. And I want to say first, our Supervisor, Craig Peterson from King County. I don't see him on yet, but he will join us. And when he come on, we will go back to him. He serves as the chair of NACo Agriculture and Rural Affairs Steering Committee. And I'm so glad that I appointed him. He's on his mission. He speaks up. He makes sure that our farming community is at the table and making a difference as we move forward. Next, I want to introduce to many of you, Mr. Bobby Wilson. He is the CEO of the Metropolitan Atlanta Urban Farms. He uses this 5-acre property as a teaching tool for economic empowerment zone and food production site for the Southwest Metropolitan Atlanta community. I also want to brag on Mr. Wilson, because on yesterday, he was selected to serve on the U.S. Department of Agriculture Advisory Committee for Urban Agriculture. And he's also the father of a Grammy-nominated award-winning singer. I'll let him talk about that when he wants to. And he's also been featured on OWN. And he's a guy that I met many years ago, he had me doing plants and vegetables on top of our county public health building. And then we had people wanting basil and tomatoes and peppers. But I want to turn it over to Mr. Bobby Wilson, who will take a few minutes to talk about his endeavors and what he's doing. Take it away, Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Commissioner. I would like to personally thank you and the Planning Committee of the National Association of Counties for the opportunity to share my vision, my hopes, my dreams, and how the county commissioners can and will support urban agriculture across this great nation. I'm gonna steal a page from Michael Thurman's book, America, One America. America, God has shared his grace on thee. He's crowned thy goods with brotherhood from sea to shining sea. America, one America. You have showed us the best of you. You have showed us the worst of you. But in spite of all, we keep moving towards a more perfect union. A place where my grandchildren and your grandchildren will be able to live out the true meaning of equity, diversity, and inclusion a whole lot better than what we have done. As I look back 20 years ago, urban agriculture was a no-no with the U.S. Department of Agriculture. As an urban farmer, my job goes way beyond planting a seed and watching it grow. It is also about growing people. Well, Bobby, what do you mean by growing people? It is about that student that was part of a beta club here in the metro Atlanta area and worked on the NOIS project with us in conjunction with the National Science Foundation, Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and Metro Atlanta Urban Farm, and I being one of the first co-PIs of a major project that came from a grassroots organization. That student now is in communication with Cornell University and looking at attending school there. It never would have happened without an urban farm. It's about that young man who spent time during the summer here and came down 3-4 days a week after he finished high school, had no idea what he wanted to do. And after spending time here, he registered at Fort Valley State University and is getting a degree in agriculture. It's about that young mother who comes here 2-3 times a week with her young son that she is homeschooling, making sure that he gained those agriculture skills that will enable him to feed himself one day if it becomes necessary. It's about that student that was self-contained and did not have a great personality, but he got involved in the NOIS project and became one of our best coders. Students learning how to code through agriculture. That same student planned our first agriculture jobs tour here in the Metro Atlanta area. There's so much more about urban agriculture than planting a seed and watching it grow. There's those companies like Cargill that has invited us to the table and given us a seat at the table, and they are working with us to make a difference in marginalized and underserved communities. There's a Amerigroup, whom we've been working with for several years, and Our job is to make sure that their clientele know about locally grown fresh vegetables that are free of chemicals that will assist them in bringing forth a child that is much more healthier. And then there's those universities from across this great nation of ours, student and faculty that we are working with, helping students get master's and doctor's degree, and working with them on their dissertation, and working with them on research projects. America, America, God has shared his grace on thee, a place where you and I can agree to disagree, but still come to the table to find common ground for the good of a global society, not a county society. As an urban farm, and as one who believes in mandates, I truly do believe that we have been mandated to feed the hungry, to clothe the naked, to provide shelter for those who have been left out in the elements. And it's my part is to feed my people. It is my part to make sure that I'm taking care of my community. It is my part that I'm doing my best to bring about substantial changes. And those changes is about sustainability. Those changes are about co-creation. Those changes is about building trust. Those changes are about building bridges between generations and between people. Those changes are about conservation. As a county commissioner, let me tell you something. I need you to know that in order for me to make a difference in the lives of marginalized and underserved people and those who have been left out of the mainstream of society, I need a place where students can come together and train that are coming from our inner cities and going into agriculture and never been on a farm before. I need that place. I need a building, an educational research lab here at 3271 Main Street so that I can get our students engaged in science and in research. Can you imagine what difference that would make? I'm coming to a close now. As you know, education is expensive. I need the same tax break that farmer has 100 acres of land. I need the same tax break on my 5 acres of land. I need you to set aside funding that's earmarked for urban agriculture, and I need it to be a fair and just process. I need you to help me fight these food deserts through community gardens, through urban agriculture, maintaining and sustaining green space. This will help us improve the quality of life for all people. And I leave you with these words. Let your decision-making process be driven by a higher power that is for the good of all people. I pass the mic to the next speaker.
And that mic hot. He left that mic hot. I might call you.
Hey, he didn't go like this.
I might call you Pastor Reverend Wilson. You're not a farmer today. You doing something. I appreciate that. Now we're gonna go to our chair, the man who's hails from the West Coast, and say good morning to him. He's our chair of the NACo's Agriculture and Rural Affairs Steering Committee. None other than Supervisor Peterson. Take it away, sir.
Hey, well, thank you, President Johnson. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity to serve as your chair of the Agriculture Committee. It's an honor, and it's even more of an honor serving with all of the vice chairs and the members of the committee, and really enjoy every moment of it. So as a quick introduction, it was just pointed out, my name is Craig Peterson, Supervisor, Kings County, California, serving as the Agriculture and Rural Affairs Steering Committee Chair. This committee consists of nearly 100 officials across the county passionate about these issues. Jurisdictionally, we're responsible for all matters pertaining to USDA, agriculture, rural development programs, renewable energy, development, research and extension, food safety, and conservation programs. We pay close attention to all of these things rural. In addition to agriculture, other industries are becoming an important part of the rural landscape. Long-term economic trends in rural communities show growth in service and retail, trade industries, and various other industries in recreation, food service, education, and healthcare. While I'm wearing my chair hat, I wanted to highlight a few things we are paying close attention to before touching on my experience as an owner and operator of a third-generation diversified farming operation. NACo's Ag Committee will closely monitor rural development programs such as rural housing, rural poverty, out-migration issues, and the upcoming Farm Bill. We'll also pay close attention to water and wastewater infrastructure, transportation, technology, economic development, and rural healthcare programs. We believe that the government should look for ways to streamline and simplify federal regulations and grants to rural counties. We'll be tracking other things, but that goes beyond today's call. I'll quickly add that we recognize that the ability of county governments to provide services financed by property and other local taxes is dependent on farm income and rural businesses. Agriculture is a key component of economic development and should be included in any comprehensive rural development programs. NACo supports family farms in producing agricultural goods. That's why we have this call today. We recognize the importance of keeping the integrity of family farming in place to support our rural communities. So at this point, I'll take off my chair hat and give you my personal experiences. So with that, I will welcome you from the land of fruits and nuts. Yeah, we really do grow those things in California, especially in the Central Valley of California, where I'm from. I wish every farmer from across the nation had the opportunity to grow crops in California. In my county alone, we produce some 150 different commodities with a value of just over $2 billion in 2020. With very stable and predictable growing conditions, the risk associated with crop production is the lowest anywhere in the world. Couple that with rich soil, and you have the goose that lays the golden eggs of food security, predictably supplying this nation year after year. On a daily basis, California supplies 1/3 of all food consumed in the nation. So what could this third-generation farmer with no land debt on 1,000 acres and a shop full of technically advanced equipment be worried about? So much so that after 2.5 generations, nearly 90 years of blood, sweat, and tears paying for land and surviving low crop values, that I would sell the farm and move the assets out of California. As any farmer knows, soil and water are key, the latter being the linchpin for me. The Endangered Species Act continues to literally change the landscape of California and beyond. The consultation policy for species review has been lost to partisan whims, not science. Millions of acre feet of potable water are dumped into the Pacific Ocean on an annual basis with no reasonable species recovery. It's frustrating to say the least. If you draw water from the Colorado River, you must shake your head at the demand from California as we dump this most valuable commodity into the ocean. You know, if that weren't enough for me and my issues, the regulatory burden on farming is unending. WOTUS, death tax, wetlands, and labor come to mind. I sold my ranch to a company that farms 35,000 acres. They have 7 staff attorneys and numerous ranch managers. So why should this concern you? The concentration of our food supply and price, as well as the loss of 90 years of experience in sustainably feeding and clothing America and beyond. In my case, I watched state and federal water supplies being stripped from our county, along with the land values, only to be backfilled by solar panels. Recently, a 26,000 acre facility went online to offset large corporate and urban green energy requirements beyond our county lines. It's not green energy, it's brown, displacing family farms and businesses along with tax base and most importantly, jobs. I know it sounds a little bitter, but I successfully moved and protected my family's assets. Unfortunately, my children will never know the joy of farming. I share my experiences and encourage you to do what we farmers do best, and that's critically thinking through every detail. We must tell our story to anyone who will listen, and I thank NACo for providing the vehicle to do so. In closing, President Johnson, it's been my honor to serve as the chair of the Ag and Rural Affairs Committee. But as you know, the value of this organization is the people and the friendships. So with that, I turn it back. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for that passion. Thank you for educating us and really alerting us to what's going on. That's why I made you the chair, because you know how to do it.
Thank you.
You not only speak it, but you lived it. So we appreciate that for speaking up to for our rural communities. Now I'm gonna turn it over to a great guy, a friend of mine, who is our leader for our county, who leads over 780,000 residents in the 4th largest county in the state of Georgia, who's been our CEO, the Chief Executive Officer since 2017. But what draws us and connects us is his story on farming in Athens, Clarke County. And I want to turn over to him, and he can share with our colleagues across the nation his story, his family story. Our CEO, Michael Thurman. Take it away.
Thank you, Mr. President, and more importantly, thank you for your vision, your integrity, and your leadership. And thank you for honoring me with the opportunity to serve on this panel. To my friend, Mr. Bobby Wilson, always a pleasure to be with you. Mr. Chairman Peterson, thank you for your words of insight and, quite frankly, for your honesty as you share the challenges you're facing. But my primary role today is to say to the men and women who are still farming the land in rural and urban areas, I just come to let you know how much I appreciate and admire you for your dedication, your hard work, and for doing the necessary work to put food on the table for tens of millions of Americans and for people all across this world. Having grown up on a farm, Mr. President mentioned that, and you know, it was a family farm, but we didn't own the land. In fact, we were sharecroppers. I'm descendant, Mr. Chairman said he's the 3rd generation. I'm descendant from 3 generations of Georgia sharecroppers. My dad and my grandfather, my great-grandfather were all illiterate Georgia sharecroppers. And to be honest with you, we cropped more than we shared. But my dad loved scratching a living out of the land. I spent the first 17 years of my life on a farm, and we raised cotton. We raised anything we could get out the ground, to be quite honest with you. But he taught me something. And he just said, through faith and hard work, all things are possible. And I've carried some of those basic lessons that I've learned, lessons about hard work, about delayed gratification, about not losing faith. It takes a unique person to put those seeds in the ground in the spring. And even now, there's nothing more delightful than the smell of fresh turned dirt in the spring. And I just want you to know that Commissioner Johnson, myself, the other people on this call, we recognize it. I know he grew up on the south side of Chicago, but he has been one of those leading figures and voices to recognize that literally, as Mr. Wilson said, we are one America. We're all in this together, urban and rural, suburban. And only by channeling and sharing the resources, the knowledge, and making sure that all of us have an opportunity to fulfill our goals and objectives, only then can we really, really live out and achieve the American dream. One of the things we were able to do with the support of the president is at the outset of the pandemic, when millions of Americans lost jobs, and we lost about 40% of our employment in DeKalb and about 30% national. All of us overnight, people were out of work. At the same time, I was looking at reports on state and national TV of farmers who were being forced to turn their crops in the field and to pour out dairy products because most of the market had disappeared. Many of them had agreements and relationships with public schools and with restaurants. So they were literally forced to destroy their crops in the fields. At the same time, we had tens of thousands of residents in urban America, DeKalb included, who were suffering from food insecurity, if not hunger. So what we were able to do is that we met with the Commissioner of Agriculture here in Georgia, and we sat down and we talked. And Gary Black is our commissioner. And we developed a partnership with the Georgia Grown program, which emphasizes purchasing products and produce raised and produced here in the state of Georgia. And beginning in April of 2020, and every month since then, we've distributed on average between 3,000 and 4,000 boxes of fresh fruits and vegetables, the majority of which were grown in Georgia, not all, as well as protein produced in Georgia. Just 2 weeks ago during King Day, we distributed some 4,000 boxes of fresh fruits and vegetables, a dozen eggs, and 10 pounds of frozen chicken to people who need it, using our network and the churches in our community. And I've never said this to anyone, but we sharecrop, but we also on weekends, we would my dad was the vegetable man in Athens, Clarke County. We would sell what we raised, and we would also come here to Atlanta to the farmers market and get other fruits and vegetables that didn't grow in Northeast Georgia or was out of season in this part of the country. And he sold the fruits and vegetables on Saturday. So, Mr. President, when we're out distributing boxes of fruits and vegetables to thousands, matter of fact, we've distributed some 64,000 boxes since the pandemic began. I'm there channeling my father, who understood the value of farming, who understood what it means to be able to scratch a living out of the dirt, and took great pride in providing fresh fruits and vegetables and protein to citizens all around Athens, Georgia. We are continuing that tradition. So I'll stop. And I just really want to say, other than to share my history of having grown up on a family farm, I really just come to say, Mr. President, Mr. Chair, thank you on behalf of millions and millions and millions of Americans, millions and millions and millions of people all across this world who have food on the table, who are able to find food and protein for their families, simply because of your work, your dedication, your commitment, and your love of farming. So God bless you. And we have to continue, urban and rural, particularly urban, to recognize how important maintaining family farms are and supporting agriculture and working together, not just to keep food on the table, but also to keep the American dream alive. Because a big part of the American dream is about men and women who came to this country, who were committed to eking out a living, who saw the value of farming, of working and sharing those products with those consumers who needed them. So thank you so much, Mr. President, for the invitation. Thank you, family farmers and commercial farmers. And always know that we are in this together. We are one America. It's not red, it's blue. We have to work together to make sure that all Americans have access to free, to nutritious and healthy foods. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. We appreciate that. Now we'll go on to my commissioner, Bob Fox from Renville County, Minnesota, where it's really cold there. He serves as our vice chair for NACo Ag Policy Committee and actively it participates in the NACo's Rural Action Caucus, which is RAC for short. And he was one of the commissioners who inspired me when I talked about family farms. And I just appreciate him so much with his story. And of course, his wife is a former teacher. She's retired. We get a chance to talk and chit chat at NACo. And that's what NACo is about. We're one big family. It's about networking. It's about connecting with people from other parts of the country. And you learn something. I've learned so much from the folks in Minnesota. So Commissioner Bob Fox, take it away. You're on mute.
Geez, hard to believe after all this, I haven't pushed the button. So. Okay, thanks, President Johnson. Appreciate it and welcome. As I sat in my family room in my house of a 4th generation farm that my great-grandfather homesteaded. The unique thing about this farm on the abstract is that when America was building and growing, they gave land to the railroads. And the first 5 miles next to the railroad was given so that the railroad could sell it and then build the railroad. And so being 4.5 miles from the railroad, the first name on our abstract is the Chicago Northwestern Railroad. So just a little bit of history. So again, today I'm just going to talk a little bit about I'll say a little bit about the crops, but I'm going to talk about drainage, which is a big issue in some parts of Iowa, Minnesota, and the upper Midwest. But Renville County is kind of unique. We grow a lot of different crops, maybe not quite as many as Supervisor Peterson does, but we're unique in the Midwest for growing canning crops. We have peas and sweet corn, lima beans. We have a lot of the other beans, navy beans, the Great Northern Reds, kidney beans. They're all grown. And then soybeans, corn, and sugar beets. And corn and sugar beets are really the 2 big crops that are grown. But anyway, with all these crops, you need fertile soil. You need soil that's well managed. And one of the things that the USDA started back in probably the 30s or the 40s, and especially after the 40s, was to have a safe and abundant food supply. And one of those areas in the Midwest to do that was to help with drainage. And through at that time, it was the USDA offices, and now it's Farm Service Agency, but they were the ones that really pushed drainage. And in our county, we're a big county, we're 981 square miles, but in our county, we have 769 miles of open drainage ditch. And so when there's excess water, that's where that water will flow to. And then connected to that are another 1,300 plus miles of underground tile. And so you say, well, what does the county do with all that? Well, the county in our state, my joke for it after being commissioner going on my 20th year is that the county, we act as 2 things. 1, we're the referee, and 2, we're the banker. And the owners of it are the landowners. The county doesn't own it. Our name is on it, but we don't own it. But we take care of it and we manage it. We have a staff of 2.5 full-time people that take care of this for our county, and all their expenses are charged back out to the landowners. But it still says Renville County Tile. So how does it work? Well, we have a system that there are benefits, and you pay per the benefits into a fund. And in those funds, the only place those funds can be used is on that system that the landowners own. So in Renville County, we've been going through a process right now of redetermination benefits, which has been going on for 3 or 4 years. And we're actually getting some work done that we did have over 150 systems that we took care of, and we're managing some of those to get them to combine and whatnot because they were branches. And so I think when we're done next year, we'll probably have 140 systems that we will take care of throughout the state. So what happens is the landowners will need improvements. They will apply and follow state statute. And again, we will okay it as a county board. We actually have meetings that we act as a drainage authority. So it is a very important part. It's probably one of the most important parts in my county that farmers interact with the county. So the financial piece is handled through our auditors and treasurer's office. We have one gal in our office that all she does is drainage. And she's kind of been overwhelmed here in the last 2 years of all our redeterminations that we've done. But it's just a huge piece that our county expects, and probably one of the few statutes that most of our farmers, they probably can quote at least a few sentences of Minnesota statutes, chapter 103, just because they deal with it so much. So I guess with that, I will turn it over and let Commissioner Patzer continue on.
All right, Commissioner Paxter, you want to go on? And he's our president of the Minnesota State Association this year. And I had a chance to meet him, and he's doing a yeoman job. And he also touched me with his farm story and family farm. So please take it away, sir. Glad to have you.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's wonderful to be here with you all. And thank you for coming out to Minnesota to see us at our annual conference. It was wonderful to hear from you and have those conversations. And that, you know, we talk about our story, and we talk about the farm a lot in Minnesota. And I didn't understand until you called me later how much that sort of connected with you. So that was fun to have those conversations. And thanks to Bob for that brief overview of the county drainage systems. That's a 100-hour course that he tried to teach in 4 minutes there. So there's a lot going on there, and he's right. That is excess water is the cause of much consternation in farm country in Minnesota, and that's a strange thing for parts of the country that have not enough of it. And so it's a really very, very controversial topic. As far as that, it's my story. I actually do farm. I'm a farmer by trade, and I live in Aquifer County, which is a very rural county. We're on the western edge of Minnesota, probably less than 100 miles from where Commissioner Fox is sitting right now. We raise corn and soybeans are by far and away the 2 biggest crops we raise, both on my farm and here in Aquifer County. We do have sugar beets. We do have some wheat, edible beans, things like that. Minnesota's a big livestock producing state. We have, I think, Commissioner Fox can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think we're the nation's biggest producer of turkeys here in Minnesota, and also very large producers of hogs, and there's getting to be a lot of large dairy operations. In rural Minnesota, agriculture, as President Johnson maybe mentioned, agriculture absolutely is the engine that drives the entire economy out here. If the farm community is doing well, then everybody's doing well on Main Street and the little towns and everything else. Our counties do handle the drainage administration, like Commissioner Fox spoke of. We're also very active in land use and zoning issues, citing livestock operations, permitting. Producers have to work with our county staff on all that stuff, and there's some pretty stringent rules. Minnesota has some pretty strong environmental protection stuff happening, maybe with good reason. And there's a lot of rules they have to jump through about water, manure management plans, and site selection stuff and zoning. So there's a lot of interaction with county departments whenever there's growth or progress in the ag community. Road systems are a big one. We run our county highway departments. Much of our rural road systems are probably over half of them are gravel roads. They're not hard surface roads, and they were designed and built in a time when 80 and 90,000 pound semi loads of commodity were not the norm. And so there's a lot of challenges about if we have the wrong conditions at harvest time, our roads are demolished essentially, and we have to work with our farmers and our county staff to try to keep those roads in decent shape. we have a lot of, you know, regulations and interactions with our local, with our state Minnesota Department of Natural Resources. There's a lot of competing interests. And I heard Commissioner or Supervisor Peterson, your story about your farm and your family and some of the regulations and WOTUS and the things that you had to weigh in your decisions are very much active in Minnesota. I mean, it resonated so well. So thank you for that story, because we see the same things here. And there's a lot of, you know, farms are getting bigger here in Minnesota. They have to. The economies of scale won't allow. You know, we've heard from Mr. Wilson. My goodness, what a fantastic message he had today. Thank you for that, sir. But it was, you know, a 5-acre farm or a 100-acre farm in rural Minnesota. My family farm consists of about 2,000 acres, and believe it or not, that is not a big farm. That's actually kind of a small farm these days. They are growing leaps and bounds, and sometimes we are our own worst enemy. We swallow each other up as the generations pass by. But anyway, as far as our local DNR, we have a lot of competing interests that are pressuring them to pursue things to sort of counteract a lot of that drainage stuff that Bob spoke of. And that drainage law is, you know, we not only have a right to maintain those ditch systems as a county, we actually have a statutory responsibility to do that. We have to do it. And there are a lot of people that would like to see us not do that. And so there's some difficult relations that happen with our state. So another thing we fight with all the time, as the farms get bigger, there's fewer of them, and our population loss is a big problem for us in rural Minnesota. We have a lot of counties in western Minnesota who have fewer people today than they had 100 years ago. And we have a lot of counties, including mine, that have fewer than half the people they had 60 years ago. Our schools are shrinking. So we have that issue that we're dealing with. And it's really hard when you had schools and churches and main streets that supported twice as many people a few generations ago are trying to figure out how to keep going now that there's half as many people. But as far as the county interaction goes with us, there's a lot of those you know, land use issues, environmental issues, transportation issues. Those are probably the biggest things that we deal with. Trying to see you know, it's a difficult process. It is everywhere, I think. But to see the family farm, as I was able to sort of, you know, assume this leadership role on my family farm from my dad and his dad, and it kind of comes down the generations. And I have a son who wants to do this someday himself, and it's a big challenge to figure out how to get that. It sounds easy to just have your son or daughter start farming with you, but the economy of it is not that simple. So it's a big challenge, and family farms fight with that in Minnesota all the time. I think that kind of covers some of the stuff I wanted to talk about in terms of the county interaction with our ag people. It's an honor to have been here, President Johnson, and I'll turn it back.
Man, thank you so much. And you are hearing these stories, NACo family and folks who are joining us, the family farm, the traditions, the challenges, the successes. So please let those questions flow in the chat, and we will open up for a few other live questions from our NACo staff, but these questions in the chat are good. And so some of the speakers who are here, please look at the chat, because there may be some questions directed towards you and you can answer them right away. Now I want to bring up this young lady here. I had the honor and privilege to be with her in Utah. I mean, Commissioner Pearson. She bleeds Utah. She bleeds the family farm, public lands. She's a walking encyclopedia. I call her Wikipedia, because she educated me so much around public lands, BLM. I think it was BLM. I thought they was talking about Black Lives Matter, but she meant Bureau of Land Management. And so we just went through a lot in education, and she is a subcommittee vice chair for Public Land Steering Committee and an active member of RAC. I want her to come in her own way and talk to us about her family farm and experiences that are going as relates to public lands as well. Take it away, Commissioner.
Thank you, President Johnson. And it was a pure pleasure to have you in Utah and drag you around and throw you on a horse and get some boots on the ground, right? We had a good time. That was good. And thank you, Chairman Peterson, as well. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Tammy Pearson. I've been in lifelong multi-generation farmer rancher. And then I also married into a long generation farming and ranching family down in Minersville. We're in the southwest desert of Utah, and it is a small family farm. I have to kind of laugh. We all have our own version of small and large. To me, I'm one of the bigger ones, and I irrigate 600 acres. But I have been to Minnesota, so I understand your issues. I just wish you could pipe that water to Utah. We could use that all day long, right, Craig? Anyway, so what we do, our farms and Utah in general, for those of you that maybe are not familiar with that, Utah in general is 60% federally managed land. BLM is the majority of it. Then we also have Forest Service, and Utah as a state has made grazing a priority on all of those kind of lands that are available for grazing. As a county, my county is Beaver County, and we've actually zoned every square inch of our county for grazing. So anything that is BLM, Forest Service, or that is zoned for grazing. Agriculture in general is the backbone of our entire state. That's our biggest money maker as far as that goes. But our largest commodity is cattle. It's not crops, even though we do have, one of the counties in Utah is the highest cherry producing, Bing cherry or whatever, pie cherries that in the nation. Our county is the largest agricultural producing county, and we have mostly cattle, but we also have a large hog farm, and that is the industrial end of ag in our county. And but the people that I want to talk about mostly is because we are the arid West, or the second driest state of the U.S. and most of our farming and our ag is related to the access to public lands for grazing. And then that ties back to the irrigated grounds that we have. And our irrigation comes not only from surface water off of our snowpack and our watersheds, but we also have underground wells, and that we're mining our own aquifer. And we've been faced, historical droughts. This is probably the last 20 years is probably the worst drought in history and recorded history. But it ebbs and flows. I mean, we'll have some remarkable years once in a while, about get washed off the map in 2020, but it's not going to happen this year. So we're very focused on conservation, especially water conservation. Some of the things that I've done in my life that I'm really familiar with is I served with the Soil Conservation Service, and they have programs and through the FSA and that you can apply through the Farm Bill and through the NRCS for conservation practices. We've mostly, sorry for the clock in the background, we've applied for changing our irrigation systems. Back in the day, I used to change canvas dams and dirt ditches, and we flood irrigated everything from where I was at. And we'd have to level the ground and put levees in, and you'd flood each section of that. Well, it wastes a lot of water. but in the area that we did that in, the soil is very high in alkali. So we also have the drain ditches. So hopefully that flood irrigation would drain into those drain ditches and pull that alkali out of the soil. I moved a little farther south of the state and they had gated pipe. We've had the siphon tubes. We've got cement ditches. And we've moved on. I thought the greatest man on earth was the one that invented the wheel lines that you run it from one riser to the next and you can irrigate it. Well, the wind blows so damn hard down here that you can't, wherever you set that sprinkler during the day, it doesn't irrigate under the sprinkler, it irrigates the next line over. And so we've moved now, the new deal is pivot irrigation systems. And for those of you, anybody that's in agriculture, I'm sure you know that, but for those of you that are not, when you're in the plane flying from DC to the California, those big crop circles that you see down there, that's pivot irrigation systems. So we've done that to conserve water. We've backed we can actually grow more under a pivot with less acreage than you can with a wheel line on a 40-acre field. You'll cut that field down and have fallow corners. And so we've had to do that. A lot of these programs that we've used, like I said, is the EQIP program that's been very beneficial in the West to us to conserve water. We're on that top end of that Colorado River drainage system, and it makes me sick to my stomach just thinking about that water running into the ocean. It's such a critical thing, top to bottom, that whole whole watershed, the different basins that rely on that Colorado River, not only for agriculture but also for energy production and that. And so it's been very, very critical for us to work on those kind of issues. One other thing that I'd like you to, especially the committee and the staffers that are on, is the West runs completely different than the Midwest and the water. I mean, we just have no water whatsoever. And so our average annual rainfall is 7 to 9 inches a year. And so everything that we do is tied to, and especially the BLM, the public lands, is some of the drought relief programs where we're paying for hauling water, paying for hauling feed, paying to move the animals, like with the wool producers, the wool growers bunch, and the sheep guys. They have to pick up, or the cattle, same thing. They have got to move their herd somewhere else that has not been stricken by the drought. And so a lot of those federal payments and that are tied to that are very critical to us. As far as we've focused a lot on our county resource management plans and our planning and zoning committee, and try to make sure that we preserve the farming areas. So we will never have an urban sprawl, but our little communities, that's their natural growth, is to pull out of agriculture, pull the water away from that. We actually have neighboring counties that have come in and filed on water rights in our county because they've mismanaged their own communities. And so now they're mining our aquifer, which is going to really hurt us, maybe not tomorrow, but in 10 years. The grazing rights and the springs and stuff for that. But, the family farm, in my eyes, and I think everybody else, is comparable to the threatened and endangered species. We're very few and far between now. I think the latest statistic I heard, this less than 1% of the United States population are involved in agriculture and feeding America and the world. So Utah in general, 1960, we had 13 million acres, over 13 million acres that were in production agriculture. Now, 2020, we're less than 11 million. So we've lost 21% of our farm ground. And I'm pretty sure it's gone to industrial or housing and that, but we're a threatened species. So I appreciate the opportunity to tell you a little about Utah.
Thank you so much. And we appreciate that insight and in-depth knowledge about what we're doing. Now we'll go to our last speaker, but not least, Supervisor Orlando Trainer from, I'm going to get this name right, Oktibbeha County, Mississippi. And he's our supervisor. He's the vice chair of RAC. I'm glad I had a chance to appoint him as well. And he's also a member of the Ag Committee. And take it away, Supervisor Trainer. We're glad to have you here and helping us to talk about family farms. You take it away, sir, and good to see you.
Yes, sir. It's good to be on the call this afternoon. First of all, we just want to give honor to all of these great speakers, from our president all the way down to all of our speakers. We really enjoyed everything that we have heard. My name is Orlando Trainer, and I bring you greetings from the great state of Mississippi by way of Oquifer County, Mississippi. And I just delighted to be a part of this conversation. I was just excited when I got the invitation to participate in this call, and I'm not going to be long, try to be as brief as I can. We've had some great speakers, and I've learned a lot of great information from my colleagues across America. One of the things about Mississippi that makes us unique is that in the past, we've always been last in the good things and first in the bad things. But one thing I can say from a personal perspective, I can see a turnaround, because what we do have, and we have an abundance of, is natural resources and available property. And we're just thankful here in Oquifer County that we're blessed to be in the county that has one of the largest land grant institutions in the state here in our county, which is Mississippi State University. And of course, by way of them being in the Southeastern Conference with athletics, I guess that doesn't hurt either. But nonetheless, we're certainly excited about the opportunities that we have here as it relates to family farms. I am what you call a first generation farmer. I didn't grow up on a farm, but I did work for a farm. And somehow, between me working and being exposed to farm life, I must have gotten intoxicated with rural and ag, and decided that I wanted to have a career based upon being a farmer. But yet I left Starkville and went up to the University of Mississippi and got a business degree by way of a football scholarship. But when I graduated, I came back here to Oquifer County and started a small farming operation. And of course, I've been involved in being a county supervisor here. I think this is my 23rd year, if I'm not mistaken. But I thank God for that. I got elected at the early age of 25, and I've been on the board for 23 years. But I said that to say this. One of the things that we have been doing here in Oquifer County is that about 10 years ago, we created a cooperative approach as it relates to informing and encouraging and exposing individuals to the opportunities out there in agriculture. Because we're in a rural state, we have an abundance of natural resources, corn, cotton, catfish, hay, cattle, you name it. It's grown here in Mississippi. And one of the things that was puzzling to me was, because we have all this land and this opportunity land, there were not a lot of people getting involved in agriculture, especially our young people. Some of them, because of the horror stories, I guess, that their parents told them, that some of their parents and grandparents worked on the farm, and some of them felt like that there was a lot of hard work and not a whole lot of return. And what we've been trying to do, we've been trying to reverse that trend. We've been trying to educate them to understand that based upon your food supply, you know, that says a lot about the economy. Everything else is rests on that, because if you're hungry, nothing else matters. And so what we've been trying to do, we've been trying to educate individuals and let them know that there's a lot of opportunity out there in agriculture through USDA, NRCS, FSA, and all of these other programs that are out there, to where you can actually make a great living, and you don't have to be afraid of hard work. Hard work is in any occupation. However, a lot of them had a misconception about some of the negative sides of farming: hard work, long hours, missing opportunities, and being just overwhelmed with things. And so what we're trying to do, we're trying to get them to see that there's so many other opportunities out there in agriculture to where you can make a decent living, and you can be in a state that has an abundance of natural resources, and you can take advantage of that, and you can be very successful. You can go from being 0 to 1,000 if you want to be on the upper end and want to become wealthy and want to become all this and that, or you can become what you call a small operator like I am. I'm sitting here now on about a 70-acre farm that consists of cattle and consists of hay, and I do it part-time. And some people even say, well, you're a part-time public official. Well, one thing about it is, I look at anything I do as a full-time situation. What I'm saying is that at any given moment, you never know when you may be called to duty or you got to respond. But what we've been trying to get people to see is that if you take advantage of the program, if you look at the opportunities out there now, there are more opportunities out there for whatever side of the spectrum you're on, whatever political affiliation you're on, young, old, white, black, Democrat, Republican. There's so many opportunities out there that we're trying to get people to take advantage of opportunities and then not have to leave Mississippi to go off to another place and to have a good life and to also to raise a family. That's one of the things I think that we can really offer and we can really cut our teeth on, is that we can provide a good atmosphere to where you can have a good quality of living. And then with the introduction of some of these things that are coming by way of improving broadband and improving some of the infrastructure, one of the things that we have to really focus on the board is making sure that our farmers, which we don't have as many farmers here, because one of the things that we're dealing with here in my county, because we have a university that's so successful and so popular, that everybody wants to come to our county. It may not be but 7 times a year they're doing football season, but at the same time, you have a lot of people that are coming. And so what our land base has done, it has transitioned from being agriculture to more recreation. And that's positive, but it also has a negative impact. It's positive because you can put land out there in the market and it sells at a very good premium. But it's negative because when you have people out there that are trying to farm the land in Aquifer County, some of it has gotten just so cost so much to farm that it would not be feasible. But if you decide to transform it over into some kind of recreational opportunity, you can make up for the income that you would miss if you were going to plant a crop. I think right now we may have maybe 1 or 2 row croppers that actually live in the county. Now we got some that come from some other counties that come and farm some land in Aquifer County, but that is still promising for the future here in Aquifer County and also promising for the future here in Mississippi. We have been fortunate to help to create a agricultural cooperative by the name of Unlimited Community Agricultural Cooperative. We partner with the 1890s, the HBCUs, the majority universities. We partner with anybody who has an ag program, forestry program, any kind of program that would help landowners and other individuals who are interested. And I thank God for COVID, because what COVID did, COVID allowed us to go virtual, and that gives people even more opportunities to participate in things at their own pleasure, even if they can't attend it. And so I'll wrap it up to say this: I'm excited about being on the call. We're looking forward to NACo to continue to be an advocate for farmers of all sizes, all colors. We know there's some things out there. I was involved in a conversation this morning. Some of the FSA and LCS persons that were testifying before the committee, I think the Ag Committee on the House side, and they are getting ready to prepare for this next farm bill. And this next farm bill is very important, and it has a lot of economic development, community development, agricultural, forestry. It has all of that. SNAP, all those kind of programs that people never thought was connected to the farm bill. So with that, I'm excited about being here, and we certainly appreciate this opportunity and looking forward to working with this committee henceforth. Thank you, President.
Wow, thank you all so much. You heard from some dynamic county officials, farmers, folks who are making an impact in the rural and urban communities. And this was my vision to share on how we are so connected. NACo brings us together with the resources. And please, you all, we hope to see you all in 2 weeks. In February, we're meeting for our legislative conference. We have over 1,400 participants so far who are coming to the NACo conference starting on the 11th of February, I think the 12th through the 16th. So please, you all, if you haven't signed up to come, please come. We're going to have a dynamic discussions. We have White House officials that will be present, and you can get a lot of your questions answered. And then you get a chance to connect with these great folks that's on the screen today. So what I'm going to do now is turn it over to Adam, who is going to see if facilitate the Q&A section. If we have any questions, I'll turn it over to Adam to facilitate that process.
Thank you, President Johnson, and thank you for all of the speakers today. I have definitely learned quite a bit from you all. So although this question has gotten and spurred some conversation in the chat. I wanted to pose it verbally. So Kitty Goats from New Mexico State Department of Ag asked, since the State Department of Ag currently offers a program and incentives to farmers, ranchers, and others to improve soil health for grant-funded projects, are any other counties collaborating with their conservation districts to do so? We did get some feedback from Commissioner Fox and Commissioner Patzer talking about the programs that Minnesota has to offer. I would also pose that question to the other speakers, and I would specifically ask Mr. Bobby Wilson, with your experience in urban agriculture, are you also kind of hyper-focused on improving soil health?
Yes, we are focusing on improving the environment as a whole. One of the things that we don't do is we do not use any type of commercial pesticides, insecticides, or fertilizers. We go up into the mountains of Tennessee and we buy worm castings, and that's what we feed our plants with. We set aside, we plant cover crops on certain sections every year, and we put certain portions of the land to rest during every growing season. We do a lot of composting on site. I was just out at Woodland Elementary School in DeKalb County on yesterday, teaching young folks how to do composting on a small scale. So our whole operation is about educating the next generation of the importance of maintaining and sustaining green space and making sure that we leave those natural resources that have been placed in our care much better. And soil is one of those natural resources. So we're all about building the soil. Thank you.
Do any of the other county leaders want to talk about their partnerships with conservation districts and improving soil health in their communities?
Mr. Adam, Orlando Trainer from Aquifer County. We were fortunate here with our cooperative to partner with NRCS on a grant that will help us to expose and also to inform individuals in a 4-county area about soil health strategies and different programs and things out there that would help them to improve their operation. And we're in the second year of that grant, about a $90,000 a year grant. And basically what we do is that we take a grassroots approach as it relates to getting people together, getting them organized, bringing in speakers, and then also encourage them to get connected with other avenues and other opportunities out there where they can learn more about soil health strategies. And then also try to really make it as elementary as we can so people won't become overwhelmed and be discouraged and say, well, hey, this is something that's just too overwhelming for me. In other words, we try to encourage people to grow something in a pot and then kind of go from there. And if you want to go to your flower yard, go to your garden, or go to something a little bit larger. And so by talking about these soil health strategies, and one other thing that's a big push now is what we call regenerative agriculture. And when I say regenerative, it's just basically doing it the way it was done from the beginning. And that's like Mr. Bobby was saying, with all natural process. So that's something that we're doing here in Aquifer County in Mississippi.
Thank you for sharing. Commissioner Pearson, I saw you take yourself off of mute.
Yeah, I was just going to say, our county specifically, we have a lot of cooperating agencies that we work with. Specifically, Utah State University has what they call an extension service. And I'm not sure if that's I think there's a lot of those in the West, but it's our land grant university. And so we sponsor a lot of the crop schools and soil health, and we have seminars and webinars and workshops, and we do that year round. And that ties in with the conservation districts. We have 2 specific conservation districts in our county, and they work with us on those kind of things. A lot of the other things that we work with is we have some of the threatening invasive species. So we work through a lot of that kind of stuff with spraying the invasive species and trying to get rid of those countywide. But we have a cooperating agreement with both BLM and Forest Service and the private property owners.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing. And one of the, sorry, Commissioner Fox?
Yeah, I was just going to add on, the Extension Service is one that we use a lot too for the education piece. A prime example is that years ago, when I first started farming, the livestock guys couldn't get rid of manure. I mean, it was an issue. But with research and through the Extension Service, we've proven to show that the ground that the manure is put on will accept more water. So there's less runoff, there's less silt. And so now it has gone just the other way. The manure is one of the most valuable commodities in the neighborhood. So, but it's through those partnerships that makes that work.
Awesome. Thank you. Commissioner Pat from Blue Earth County, Minnesota, noted that his county is part of the Drainage Authority. During his first year, they had 72 actions at 46 meetings on 27 ditch systems. Across the country, do any of the other presenters have the same authority when it comes to drainage ditches, and what is some of the work that you guys have done locally in your respective areas?
We don't deal with that on a county level. Most of our irrigation systems are all tied to companies, and so they work with that, and they work through the other government agencies. Our county specifically hasn't dealt with that.
All right. I think Supervisor Peterson's trying to talk, but it's still on me. There we go.
Yeah, I just, you know, in our neck of the woods, it's all irrigation districts, and we have state mandated nitrate management plans. So you can't drain it all. And now the transition, you know, it was interesting to hear Tammy talk about, you know, flood irrigation and the perceptions and how they change. And you know, we've obviously are so tight on water that probably 60% of the crops of our area are all on drip systems or microjet sprinklers. You know, with WOTUS coming, I mean, that's just going to be another challenge as they broaden that discussion. And with our irrigation districts, you know, you can't, you have to provide a nitrogen management plan, and there's absolutely no drainage allowed. So, but the other thing I was just thinking about that Tammy mentioned was flooding. And for us, you know, we have become so dependent on groundwater that we're seeing massive subsidence in some areas, you know, almost 18 inches a year. And much of that is because we have had to move back to using groundwater because of, as I talked about earlier, the Endangered Species Act and the diversions of water that would typically come to agriculture are not available. But the interesting thing about flood irrigation is that what we're finding is, you know, we're so efficient at delivering water to a plant with a microsystem that nothing goes back into the groundwater table and recharges that. And so I think the thought is still out on you know, whether flood irrigation is a waste or a benefit. So that's what I have.
All right. Thank you,
Can I
Supervisor.
sneak in one more comment real quick on that?
Yep.
I was really, one of our big issues, like what you're talking about, Craig, is we call it the groundwater mining of the aquifer. Some counties and some watershed systems were very proactive and aggressive back in the day before there was NEPA and all of this stuff that we had to deal with. And they've got a whole system of reservoirs all the way down, like our river specifically has got 6 different lakes and reservoirs that we allocate water out of it through the different irrigation companies. You're exactly right when you're saying we're too efficient on the water because we are not doing any kind of a recharge on our aquifers. So Utah put a law in here a few years ago that during the flooding episodes, like those random years that you're going to have excess water that the reservoirs can't hold, you can store it in these other aquifers, or not aquifers, store them in these other reservoirs that are a direct flow into the aquifer. So they're looking into that. Nobody's ever proven that it's really working or not, but we're thinking it might. We're hoping it will.
Yeah, that can respond just very quickly. We have a very progressive irrigation district, one of the largest irrigated districts in California, and they actually have some biologists that can track a water molecule, and they can actually age that water molecule as it moves down through the soil profile and makes its way back into the groundwater, which is just amazing, technology that actually can show what you're doing to backfill the groundwater aquifer. But technology continues to advance in that side.
That's amazing technology. One of the questions that we received from Becky Hutenga is, can any of the speakers address farmland preservation and or conservation easements and their respective counties' role in it?
I would address that from rural Minnesota's perspective. That's one of those contentious issues that we see. Conservation easements in the form they take here generally means land is being taken out of agricultural production, which we don't see as a positive thing in our part of the state. And so the conservation easements that allow farming with some restrictions are a little less common. Usually those things mean land is being permanently taken out of production, which we view as damaging to our population loss issue, damaging to our local economy. We have a lot of conservation that takes place in rural Minnesota, but some of those easements that get sold off are not viewed very well in this part of the world. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I would add to the conversation, this Bobby in Atlanta, working with NRCS, Natural Resource Conservation Services. They have a conservation stewardship program where you can place land into farming and it will remain in the farming, whether it's forestry, whether it's row crops, anything. So I would suggest that you talk with your conservation, your natural resource conservation agency in your state and address the issue of conservation. They can probably provide that type of information from the government standpoint of view, because we're looking at putting some land in a conservation stewardship program. I would also add to the fact that cooperative extension is across the United States. It should be an extension. In Georgia, we have an extension. We used to have an extension office in every state, but now we have what we call service centers that service certain counties. And FSA is another program that you really need to become familiar with as farmers, because that's where the funding comes from for farmers even new and beginning farmers to look for funding. And as Larry stated earlier, I've been placed on VILSAC's Urban Agriculture Committee, and those are some of the issues that we're going to be addressing. And if there's some concerns that any of you might have as it relates to urban agriculture or agriculture, hopefully I have the Secretary's ear about 3 or 4 times in the course of a year, and I can bring those issues up to him. So Larry knows how to get in touch with me, so feel free to contact me if you need me. Thank you.
Yeah, Adam, if I could too, I'll pop in right quick. In California, for the better part of probably 40 years, we had a tax diversion program which highlighted agriculture. So if you signed up in an agricultural preserve program, you got a reduced tax rate, and it was backfilled by the state of California. Kind of interesting that during all the affordable housing discussions that the state legislature recently did away with that program. And so we've been left with our county to try and backfill, those tax deductions that are applied to acres that are enrolled in that. What it did was basically provided a 10-year period in which it would take you 10 years to remove your property from a Williamson Act commitment. And you would slowly lose your tax benefit over that 10-year period, again, being backfilled by the state. As progressive as our state is, I don't know, for whatever reason, they have decided to move away from the preservation of agricultural lands.
All right. Thank you for sharing. With just a few minutes left, I do want to pose one question to all of our remaining speakers, or all of our speakers left. What is one advocacy ask? If you could ask the Hill to do anything in the upcoming farm bill, what is that one ask to preserve family farms and obviously help benefit county? So let's start. I'll just run down the list. Let's start with Bobby Wilson, and then I'll run down just alphabetically on the panelist list.
If I could ask for one thing in the farm bill in terms of the funding process, I feel like it's unfair and unjust to those of us in that's minorities and disadvantaged farmers. We don't get a fair share at it. And the reason I say that, I applied for several grants. If you go to USDA website, you'll see my picture posted all over the website. But USDA has not funded one program for me in the last 5 or 6 years, but they used me as a poster child. So equity, diversity, and inclusion is very important to me. If we could bring about some type of equity in the whole process of funding, that would be the one thing that I would ask for. Thank you.
Commissioner Fox.
I think one of the biggest things in our area would be a fair and adequate crop insurance bill as part of the farm bill. A disaster can hit, and as we know right now, the interest rates are on a rise. And when I started farming, we were borrowing money some years at 13, 14%. And the numbers that we use today to put in crops, if we get back up to 10% money, it's not going to work. And especially if there's a disaster, you got to have some safety net there. And I think the crop insurance, it needs to be broader. It just can't be corn and soybeans. It has to get out and get broader for all the crops. And that's what it needs to be, is fair.
Supervisor Peterson.
Got that slow on the button. Hey, yeah, I guess, when I hear Bobby talk about having the ear of, Secretary Vilsack, I think that, when you look at agriculture in general and you look at the USDA budget, I remember, I think I've told this story, but talking to Congressman Pat Roberts back in the day when I was a young man, and I asked him, I said, man, 80% of the USDA budget has nothing to do with agriculture, right? And clearly, you know, I get the food connection, but I think there needs to be better coordination with USDA throughout all agencies and the impacts. But more importantly, telling the story of agriculture, it's not told, right? We're all told that, you know, we don't tell our story. We never, I had the opportunity before a judge that hears environmental case law. And he talked about, you know, well, you guys need to better tell your story. And I got the opportunity to ask him a question. And I said, so what part of our story are we not telling? And he was stumped, right? He had no response because we do tell our story, but our key agency in the federal government needs to tell our story. It needs to better coordinate with all of the secretarial level agencies throughout about the impacts and the importance of, you know, an abundant food supply, because here we are, you know, what China controls right now. I keep listening to China controls over 1/3 of nitrates and potash, and now they're imposing an embargo, and you know, that directly affects food supply in the United States. So I think just a better coordination across our federal government. Thank you.
Supervisor Trainer.
Just quickly, I would just say all of the above what has been said. Just better access to programs, and then also a better support base as it relates to individuals who can help people go through these processes, not make it so difficult and so overwhelming for people to get involved and to continue the agriculture and farming way of life.
Commissioner Pearson.
I have to say amen to Craig, because that's exactly where we're at. We can't get that message out. And I think that for the majority of Americans, they forgot where their food comes from. They can run through a drive-through, or they can go to Walmart or whatever, and that's where the food comes from. And it's like I said before, we're on that endangered species list, and trying to protect the family farm, you know, whether it's the urban farm, you know. And I love your story, Bobby, you know, the urban farm, it's so critical that we teach people how to be self-sufficient. They can grow their own food. They got to know where that's coming from. And we've got to be able to get that message out. So that's where I'm at. Thank you.
Commissioner Passer, to wrap us up.
Yeah, I think I would say WOTUS. I was trying to think of what I was going to say because I expected Commissioner Fox to take that one, but he left it for me. So I'll say WOTUS and some of the really restrictive language and proposals that are swirling around that issue that are seen as very unfriendly to family farms and the upper Midwest is a critical issue. If I could snap my fingers and fix something, that's what I would do.
All right. Thank you all for sharing. Commissioner and President Johnson, back to you.
All right. Thank you all for participating. We had some dynamic speakers who spoke from the heart, and these are county officials who are doing the work, and they're out there every day. And that's why I'm glad I had a chance. I want to thank Jessica, who helped pull together this seminar for me. Thank NACo staff, who's always doing a great job of just bringing the issues home that's relevant to the people and helping to empower us to go to the next level. We learned a lot. I hope our congressional staff and other audience members did too. We certainly have our hands full as the House and Senate begin drafting a new farm bill, but I know that it will be working. We have to work together to get it done. Moving forward, we don't want this webinar to be the only time county leaders are discussing the important role of family farms have within our local communities. So we need to interact more with our members of Congress and their staff to emphasize the message our panelists that we have heard today. Counties fully support family farms and strongly urge all intergovernmental partners at the federal level to implement policies that support their maintenance and continued existence. And as we get ready to close, I want you all to be prepared, because we're going to have more president's talks in the future is going to be, we'll have one on violence prevention coming up. Early learning education will be another key topic, workforce housing. And also we will talk about entrepreneurship, small business and innovations that are happening in counties. So please stay tuned to more of these great webinars. That's very interactive. And I want to thank the audience who provided these great questions. Man, this was phenomenal. And just thank you all for being a part of a great panel discussion. And I look forward to seeing you all on February 12th through the 16th at the Legislative Conference. We have over 1,400 people who are going to be joining us. Thank you all so much and have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Mr. President.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Larry. Good to see you guys.
See you soon. Bye-bye.